The third shot drop is vital for winning more points in pickleball, especially as you get to the higher level. But there's so many different ways to hit a third shot drop. So in this video, we're gonna go over 6 different types of third shot drops, how and when to hit them, and some pros and cons for each.
So let's get into it.
Now the first drop that we're gonna go over is the push drop. Now let's talk about what the push drop is, how to hit it, and some pros and cons for hitting this shot. Now, some advantages to the push drop are that it's an incredibly consistent drop for beginners. When hitting the push drop, we want to have a slightly open paddle face. We're swinging from the shoulder with a neutral wrist. We really don't want to break our wrists like this, but that open paddle face, swinging from the shoulder and falling through towards the target will create slight backspin. But when it comes to hitting this shot, this is a very defensive shot. I'm really not trying to create a lot of offense. I'm trying to allow myself time to advance in. Hitting the shot creates loft, which we say stands for lots of freaking time, and it gives you time to get to the kitchen. So let's go ahead and quickly look what this might look like here. If I'm hitting this shot, I'm gonna swing from the shoulder, and I'm gonna follow it in. Just like that, swing from the shoulder and follow it in with my follow through. Now, what you'll notice is when I'm hitting this ball, I'm letting it get to the apex. I'm starting to let it kind of fall into my paddle, but I also wanna turn my shoulder. I really don't wanna hit this drop square, or really any drop for that matter. I'm not like fielding a baseball. I'm turning and I'm aiming and following through to my target. Sometimes that is advantageous to use this drop is when you make it up to transition. So maybe right after you hit a drive, they kind of responded by blocking the ball. When you get into transition here, you rarely want to hit topspin unless the ball bounces really high. Because at this point, I'm just trying to get up to the net. I'm really not trying to create a pop-up from this region. So when I hit that drive and I come up in transition, that's a great time to hit that push drop. But now let's talk briefly about the second drop, and it's a variation of the push drop, and it's the shovel drop. Now you'll notice Ben Johns, one of the best players in the world, uses the shovel drop probably over 50% of the time. And he uses it often when the ball gets a little behind his body. So when he hits his third shot drive, sometimes he'll creep in a little bit, and if the response comes and the ball is at or behind his body, he's gonna take that grip, and instead of just keeping it slightly open, he's gonna cock his wrist slightly in and come around the outside of the ball. When you come around the outside of the ball, this is the shovel drop, and it allows you to put the ball into this deuce side of the court. This is kind of what the shovel drop is gonna look like. I'm coming around the outside of the ball, even if it gets behind me, like that was a perfect drop and I was pushed back. So when it comes to hitting the shovel drop, this is a great tool to have in your bag. It does require practice, but you really are going to cock that wrist and come around the outside of the ball. This is great when the ball starts to get behind you. And a bonus tip for hitting this shot is that we really don't want to drop the paddle tip, okay? We actually want the paddle tip to remain slightly up if possible, and we really have to get low in order to get under the ball when hitting the shot. And the last thing that I'll bring up for the push drop and the shovel drop is that these are best hit when the ball's outside of your contact point zone. So when that ball takes me outside of my stance, this is a great time to use a push or a shovel drop because I have more reach and I'm giving myself more time to get on balance for the next ball.
The third drop that we're gonna go over is the forehand topspin roll drop, which is maybe my favorite drop. And the pros to hitting this drop is it creates a ton of pressure on your opponents because of that topspin on the ball. That ball dips below the net. So this creates opportunities for your teammate to crash because oftentimes if you hit a really good one, your opponent is gonna have to hit up on that ball, potentially creating a pop-up opportunity. So that's why I really love this shot. Now, really quickly, some things to be aware of or cons of this shot. It is a very aggressive and offensive shot, and you need to time it perfectly. So when you're hitting this shot, you're gonna wanna make sure that ball hits the ground, comes up to the apex, is the highest point of that bounce, and then it starts to drop. That's when you're gonna wanna hit it. But if you don't hit it at that time, if you take it off the short hop, oftentimes you're gonna pop up the ball and you're gonna make the mistake. So the hard thing or the tricky thing about this shot is you really have to be on point with your timing in order for it to work well. So a couple things to remember when you're hitting this shot is, again, you're gonna wanna time it right to where that ball is bouncing after the apex and coming down. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have your paddle face slightly open at contact. That way you can really create that brush on the ball. You're gonna come around that ball. Pro tip here, I like to hit the side bottom of the ball and really get a little bit more side spin on it. And the last thing that's really important is your contact point. So it's gonna be very difficult to hit any type of topspin if you're contacting that ball behind the body. So it's really important that you're hitting it in your contact point zone. I like to make sure that I'm hitting it in front of my back knee. Okay, that's gonna be the best way to really get good topspin on the ball. And the very last thing, of course, to create brush, you really want a low to high motion. I'm gonna show you guys what this will look like. Again, I'm really gonna be watching for that ball to fall, hitting it in front of my body. And yeah, really focusing on getting maximum spin on that. One thing you'll notice as I was hitting those balls, I'm keeping my wrist really firm. A lot of people will almost try to windshield wiper the shot, and they'll try to impart spin with this rotation of their wrist. You can do that, but it's just a lot harder and a lot more inconsistent. So what I like to do is I like to keep a firm wrist, and what's creating the brush is my whole arm brushing up on that ball. It's a lot more consistent, and you're gonna get really good spin still.
Now let's talk about how to hit the two-handed backhand roll drop. Now this one's becoming more and more popular in the game, and it actually can be very consistent if you take time to practice it. Now when it comes to hitting the two-handed backhand roll drop, a great thing to think about would be to take your dominant hand off the paddle and your non-dominant hand is doing the work. So you can even practice this by choking up on the paddle with your finger on the paddle and hitting some opposite hand drops. That's with topspin. That's a great way to practice it because when you put that other hand on there, it's gonna feel so simple at that point. But this other hand is just for a guide. But when it comes to hitting this shot, we really want to get low. I'm talking like you should feel like you're sitting in a chair almost, because it's very important to get underneath the ball and brush with a low to high motion with that opposite hand. Some players, even when they finish and follow through, they think about finishing with their chin at their opposite shoulder. So let's go ahead and watch a couple more of these. So notice again how I'm getting really low with my stance, almost like I'm sitting down in a seat. There we go, I can do it on this one. So notice how I'm turning my front shoulder toward the target. I'm sitting really low, like I'm sitting in a seat, and I'm brushing the backside of the ball. The opposite hand's doing the work. Now, some of these feeds were kind of pushing me this way, so that might not be one I want to do it on. This works exceptionally well when you get a return in this area, because you can even think about coming around the outside of the ball. Some pros to this shot are that it can create a lot of pressure, and honestly, it can be very consistent. Some people even find it's more consistent than their one-handed drop once they practiced it, because you have that extra hand on the paddle for stability. But the cons are it does just take some time, and it's very difficult to hit unless you're committed to getting low in your stance.
The next drop we're gonna talk about is the backhand slice drop. This is one of my favorite drops to use, especially when you're pulled out of position. So the advantages to this shot is because it's the one hand, you actually have so much more reach. So this is actually kind of my go-to shot if I'm pulled out wide and I'm not quite there. It is a little bit more defensive in nature because of its low to high motion, which is not bad. Like we said, loft, giving that ball a little bit of arc and loft, Loft just stands for lots of freaking time. So this gives you time to recover, especially if you're off balance, and hopefully help your team advance to the kitchen. A lot of people will think like the slice drop isn't a great drop. I totally disagree. Depending on the time of the game and what's happening, this shot has actually saved me a lot of times to get back on balance and be aggressive with the next ball. Some things to note in terms of form, I like to think of it high, low, and then making sure you go back to high. Think of it like a Nike swoosh sign. You go down and then you end up, okay? It's like a dip like that. Biggest mistakes people make are they're too choppy. They just go high to low. Another thing that has really helped me is separating my hands together, okay? People can get really wonky if they just keep their opposite hand in. They really don't have that balance. So I like to make sure I'm approaching the ball, hands together, and then separate down, back to up. I'll show you guys what this kind of looks like. Yeah, I love this shot. This is one of the best drops I feel like in the game. Super consistent. Last thing I want to note is your wrist stays in this cocked position the whole time. Again, people can get really wonky if they have a floppy wrist. So make sure you have that firm wrist. Again, separate together, high, low, high. Use your big muscles, no karate chop. Really do that Nike sign. And again, this is best for getting pulled out, needing a little bit more time on that drop. And it's really one of the most consistent drops in the game that I feel like you can use.
So the next drop I'm gonna talk about, you may have never heard of, and it's called the chariot whip drop. Now, when I first started playing pickleball, I was probably like you, and a lot of people think that the only way you can create topspin is by brushing and finishing on the opposite side of your body. But there's a new type of drop that's kind of storming the scene at the higher level called the chariot whip drop, where we actually finish on the same side of our body. In order to execute this shot, we want to make sure that the ball gets to the apex, falls into the paddle. I want to try to make sure my back leg is right behind the ball at contact. And then I'm going to catch the ball on the descent and answer the phone, okay? So this is kind of what it looks like here. I'm gonna let the ball fall. So as you can see, that ball has nice loft and topspin, and a lot of people actually have great success with this that struggle creating topspin the other way. So it does take some practice, but when I work with people that really struggle, sometimes they're much better at this than they are at this. So the next time you're out, just try some chariot whip drops. Contact the ball in front of your body, let it fall into your paddle, and answer the phone. So the next time you're out at your course, be sure to try out the chariot whip drop.
Selkirk Academy is not your typical pickleball camp.
While other camps just scratch the surface, Selkirk Academy goes in depth, making you a better player.
All camps are taught by PCI certified coaches at some of the country's best facilities.
For more information, go to academy.selkirk.com today.
Make sure that you guys like and subscribe to the playpickleball.com YouTube channel.
And big shout out to St. Pete Athletic, the coolest pickleball club in the nation. If you're ever in St. Petersburg, Florida, make sure to check this place out. And we'll see you on the next one.